You're the biggest regret of my life, Mark. My father's voice cut through the sterile hospital room like a knife. I stood frozen at the foot of his bed, my hands gripping the metal rail. Around us, aunts and uncles shifted uncomfortably. My brother Daniel stared at his phone. Patricia, Daniel's wife, smirked from the corner. Dad's breathing was labored, the machines beeping steadily beside him. His liver had finally given up after years of drinking, and the doctor said he had hours, maybe less. I had driven 3 hours from my apartment to be here. I had taken time off from my construction job. I had come because he was my father. All these years, he continued, his voice raspy but firm, you've been nothing but a burden. Daniel made something of himself. You just take and take. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. What could I say? That I had paid his mortgage when he lost his business? That I had worked 2 jobs to help my brother through college? Nobody in that room would believe me. My name is Mark. I'm 32 years old, from a small town in Ohio. If you want to hear more stories like this one, please subscribe to my channel. You won't believe what happened next. Dad died 4 hours later. As the nurses covered his body, I heard Patricia whisper to Daniel, at least he fixed the will in time. The funeral was held on a gray Tuesday morning. Rain dripped from the tent covering Dad's grave as the pastor spoke about forgiveness and legacy. I sat in the back row, 3 rows behind Daniel and Patricia. Nobody had told me where to sit. I had just known. Daniel wore an expensive black suit. Patricia held his arm, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. They looked like the perfect grieving family. I wore the same suit I had bought 5 years ago for job interviews. The sleeves were slightly short now. When it was time for family to speak, Daniel walked to the podium. He talked about Dad's work ethic, his dedication to family, and his disappointment in those who didn't live up to his standards. He never said my name, but everyone knew. Some people take more than they give, Daniel said, glancing in my direction. Dad knew who really supported this family. Heads turned toward me. I felt my face burn. Aunt Joyce shook her head. Uncle Pete looked away. I wanted to stand up and scream the truth, but what was the point? They had already decided who I was. After the service, my cousin Trevor pulled me aside. You should know something, he said quietly. They've been planning this for years. 3 days after the funeral, Patricia called a family meeting. We gathered in Dad's house, the same living room where I had spent my childhood. The furniture looked the same, but everything felt different. Daniel sat in Dad's chair. Patricia stood beside him like a lawyer presenting a case. We need to discuss the estate, Patricia began. She had papers in her hand, official-looking documents with Dad's signature at the bottom. Your father made his wishes very clear before he passed. I sat on the couch, my hands folded in my lap. I had expected this, but hearing it still hurt. Dad was done carrying you, Daniel added. His voice was cold, businesslike. He told me himself. He said you never contributed to this family. I thought about the $15,000 I had lent Dad when his hardware store failed. I thought about the nights I had spent painting this house, fixing the roof, replacing the water heater. I thought about all of it, and I said nothing. So don't expect anything, Patricia finished. The house, the business assets, everything goes to Daniel. As they talked, I noticed something. The filing cabinet in Dad's study, the one where he kept important documents, was open. Papers were missing. I could see gaps on the shelves. I went back to Dad's house the next week. Daniel had given me a key, probably expected me to clean out my old room. I walked through the halls, looking at walls that should have held memories. My photos were gone. The wall that used to display our family pictures now showed only Daniel. His high school graduation, his wedding, his promotion. I had been erased, cut out like I never existed. I found my old bedroom. Someone had packed everything into boxes. My trophies from youth baseball were missing. My certificates from technical school were gone. Even the marks on the doorframe where Dad used to measure our heights had been painted over. In the garage, I opened the old toolbox Dad had used. Inside, I found a neighbor's business card with a note. Call me. Important. I recognized the name. Mrs. Patterson had lived next door for 40 years. I went to the basement. In the back closet, behind old paint cans, I found Dad's safe. The door was open. It was empty. Someone had already cleaned it out. Mrs. Patterson welcomed me into her home with sad eyes. She was 81, silver-haired and sharp as ever. "Your father gave me something," she said. "He made me promise to keep it safe." She handed me a cardboard box, sealed with packing tape. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Some were in Dad's handwriting. Others were from the bank, from his lawyer, from his business partners. I read them one by one. Letters thanking me for the loan that saved the house. Letters from Dad's accountant noting my name on business documents. Letters from the bank showing I had co-signed loans when Dad's credit failed. There was a letter Dad had written but never sent. It was addressed to me, Mark. It read, "I know I've been hard on you, but you're the one who always comes through. You're stronger than Daniel ever was. If something happens to me, remember the backup plan." The backup plan. I read the letter 3 times, looking for more information, but that was all it said. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of every document. I called Mr. Henderson, Dad's retired accountant. He was 70 now, living in Florida, but he remembered everything. "Your father's finances were complicated," he said over the phone, especially in his last year. I told him about the meeting with Daniel and Patricia. I told him about the will. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Mark, I need to tell you something. Large transfers were made from your father's accounts. Significant amounts. They went to an account in Patricia's name." "How much?" I asked. "Over $200,000. It happened in the 6 months before he died." My chest tightened. Was Dad aware of these transfers? "That's the thing," Mr. Henderson said. "The approvals look like your father's signature, but I always had doubts. I retired shortly after. They brought in someone new, someone Patricia knew." He paused. "Mark, someone forged those approvals. I'm almost certain." I started digging into Daniel's life, something I had never done before. I had always believed he was successful, that his business consulting firm was thriving. I had believed the image he projected. I found his company online. The website looked professional, but when I searched for client reviews, I found nothing. I checked state business records. His LLC had been suspended twice for unpaid taxes. I called an old friend who worked in banking. She ran Daniel's name through public records. "Your brother has defaulted on 3 business loans in the past 5 years, she told me. Total debt of about $400,000. I sat in my small apartment, staring at the papers spread across my kitchen table. Daniel wasn't successful. He was drowning, and Dad had been covering his failures. I found more records. 6 years ago, when Dad's business nearly collapsed, I had emptied my savings to help. $28,000. Dad had used that money to pay Daniel's debts. Daniel had never known. He thought Dad had just fixed everything with his own money. Mr. Brennan had been Dad's lawyer for 20 years. I found him in a small office across town. He was retired now, but he agreed to meet me for coffee. "I stopped representing your father about 14 months ago," he said. His hand shook slightly as he held his cup. "Patricia brought in someone new, a friend of hers from law school. Why did you leave?" I asked. He looked uncomfortable. "Your father changed. In those last months, he was different. Confused sometimes. Patricia was always there, always in his ear. She'd interrupt our meetings, question my advice. What about the will?" I asked. Mr. Brennan leaned forward. The last seemed rushed. "Your father signed it, but I wasn't convinced he understood everything." I raised concerns. That's when Patricia suggested they find new representation. He pulled out a business card. "Talk to this woman. She was there for some of the meetings. She saw things." Before I left, he grabbed my arm. "Mark," the will seemed rushed. That's all I can say. But it seemed rushed. I went back to Dad's house when I knew Daniel was at work. I had kept my key, and nobody had thought to change the locks. I moved carefully through the rooms. looking for anything Dad might have left. In the garage, I found the old toolbox Dad had given me years ago. It was supposed to be mine, but it had never left his house. I opened it, looking through the compartments. Behind a false bottom, I found a flash drive. It was taped to the inside of the box, hidden carefully. Dad had always been paranoid about important documents. He said computers crashed, but flash drives lasted forever. I took it home and plugged it into my laptop. The drive contained audio files, dozens of them, recordings of conversations. I clicked on the first one. Dad's voice came through the speakers. He was talking to someone, his words slightly slurred. "I need to protect Mark," he said. "Daniel's in trouble again, but Mark always comes through." I listened to every file. Hours of conversations. Dad talking about his sons, about his business, about Patricia's influence. One file was labeled Final Instructions. I pressed play on the final audio file. Dad's voice was weak, recorded maybe 2 months before he died. "If you're hearing this, Mark, something went wrong. I made arrangements. Legal arrangements." He coughed, the sound rattling through the speakers. "I trusted you most. You never asked for anything. You just helped when I needed it. Daniel's my son too, but he's weak. Patricia knows that. She's been pushing me to change things." I leaned closer to my laptop, afraid to miss a word. "I set up a backup plan," Dad continued. "A contingency will. It's sealed with Brennan's old firm. If anyone challenges the primary will, if there's any evidence of manipulation, it opens automatically. I put controls in place. Safeguards." The recording crackled. "I'm sorry for what I said in the hospital. Patricia was there. She'd been coaching me for weeks, telling me what to say. She said if I didn't make it clear you were cut out, you'd contest everything." My hand was shaking. Dad had known. He had planned for this. "Mark, you were never the disappointment. You were the one I could count on." I spent the next 2 months rebuilding my life quietly. I kept my construction job, but I started reaching out to old contacts, people Dad had worked with, business partners he had trusted. I didn't tell them about the recordings or the will. I just reconnected. One contact put me in touch with his lawyer friend. Another introduced me to a financial advisor. Slowly, I built a network of people who knew the truth about Dad's business, about Daniel's failures, about my role in keeping everything afloat. I stabilized my own finances. I had been living paycheck to paycheck, but I cut expenses and started saving. I needed resources for what was coming. Daniel called me once during this time. He sounded almost apologetic. "I know things have been hard," he said. "Patricia and I want to help you get back on your feet." I played along. "I'm struggling," I said, "really struggling." "We thought so," Daniel replied. "We might be able to offer you something." A former business partner of Dad's called me one evening. "I have access to old company records," he said. "If you need them, they're yours." The breakthrough came from Mr. Brennan. He called me on a Tuesday morning. "Mark," I talked to my old firm. "There's a sealed document. Your father filed it through us before we parted ways." My heart raced. "What is it?" "A contingency will. It's locked in our vault. It can only be opened under specific conditions." "What conditions?" "Proof of fraud or undue influence in the execution of the primary will. If you can demonstrate that your father was manipulated or that documents were forged, the contingency will activates." I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. "How do I prove that?" "You need evidence. Financial records showing suspicious transfers. Medical records proving diminished capacity. Witness testimony about Patricia's influence. Anything that shows a primary will doesn't reflect your father's true intentions." He paused. "Mark, I believe your father wanted you to find this. He set it up deliberately, knowing you might need it." I thought about the flash drive, the recordings, the letters. Dad had given me everything I needed. 2 weeks later, Daniel called again. "Patricia and I want to meet with you. We have a proposal." We met at a coffee shop. Daniel looked tired, older than his 35 years. Patricia was dressed in business casual, her expression friendly but calculating. "We know you've been struggling. Patricia began. She had papers with her. Always papers. We want to help you move forward. She slid a document across the table. This is a release form. You sign away any potential claim to Dad's estate, and in return, we give you $20,000. It's generous, considering the circumstances. I pretended to read it carefully. Inside, I was recording every word on my phone. This seems like a lot of money, I said, keeping my voice uncertain. It is, Daniel agreed. We're trying to be fair, Mark, despite everything. Can I think about it? I asked. Patricia's smile tightened. Of course, but we need an answer by next week. The estate is in probate, and we need to finalize everything. I took the papers home and made copies. Then I had my lawyer review them. Every clause, every sentence, was designed to strip me of any legal standing. I called Patricia the next day. I'll sign, I said, but I need a few days to get my affairs in order. She sounded pleased. Of course, Mark. Take your time. I didn't plan to sign anything, but I needed them to believe I would. I needed them comfortable, confident. I went to Daniel's house with the papers. Patricia wasn't home. Daniel invited me in, and we sat in his living room. It was expensively furnished, but I noticed the little things. Unpaid bills on the counter. Credit card offers stacked by the door. I just need to understand something, I said. Why did Dad say those things in the hospital? Daniel looked uncomfortable. He was angry, Mark. You have to understand. He felt like you never lived up to your potential. But I helped him, I said. I gave him money when the business failed. Daniel blinked. What money? I showed him the bank records I had copied. His face changed as he read them. I didn't know about this, he said quietly. While he was distracted, I took pictures of documents on his desk, financial statements, emails with Patricia's name on them. I got what I needed. Over the next month, I built my team carefully. A lawyer who specialized in estate disputes, a forensic accountant who could trace financial irregularities, a private investigator who could verify timelines and witness statements. I showed them everything. The recordings, the letters, the forged signatures on financial transfers, the evidence of Dad's confusion in his final months. You have a strong case, my lawyer said. Her name was Valerie, and she was known for winning impossible fights. But it's going to be ugly. They'll attack you personally. I know, I said. The forensic accountant confirmed what Mr. Henderson had suspected. These signatures are forged, he said, pointing to the transfer approvals. The pressure patterns are wrong. Your father didn't sign these. We calculated everything. Legal fees, expert witnesses, court costs. I had enough. Barely, but enough. Are you ready for this? Valerie asked. I thought about Dad's voice on those recordings. I thought about his apology, his plan, his trust. Yes, I said. I'm ready. I filed for a formal audit of the estate. The paperwork went to the probate court, requesting a complete accounting of all assets, transfers, and distributions from the date of Dad's diagnosis to his death. Patricia called me within hours. What are you doing? She demanded. Her friendly voice was gone. I want to understand where the money went. I said calmly, this is insulting. Daniel, and I have done everything properly. Then the audit won't be a problem. The court appointed an independent examiner. He spent 3 weeks reviewing bank statements, property records, and business accounts. Daniel called me twice during this period, asking me to withdraw the request. I didn't answer. The examiner's report came back on a Friday. I sat in Valerie's office as she read it aloud. Unexplained transfers totaling $247,000. Assets sold below market value. Business interest transferred without proper documentation. Valerie looked up. Mark, millions can't be properly accounted for. This is enough to challenge the will. The cracks started showing in Daniel's marriage. I didn't cause them. I just watched. Daniel called me late one night. Mark, I need to talk to you. Privately. We met at a diner far from town. He looked exhausted, his hair uncombed, his shirt wrinkled. I didn't know, he said immediately, about the transfers, about the signatures. I stayed quiet, letting him talk. Patricia handled everything. She said Dad wanted it that way. She said he was protecting the family assets from your potential claims. From my claims? I asked. She said you'd try to take everything. She said Dad told her you were resentful, angry. She had documents, conversations. I believed her. He put his head in his hands. I signed things I didn't understand. Papers she put in front of me. She said it was standard estate planning. I slid my phone across the table. On the screen was an email Patricia had sent Daniel 3 months before Dad died. I had gotten from the photos. I took it their house. The old man is losing it. The email read, "This is our chance to secure everything. Mark won't fight. He's too weak." Daniel stared at the screen. "Where did you get this?" "From your desk," I said. Daniel met me again 2 days later. This time, he brought a folder. "I've been going through everything," he said. Patricia kept files I never saw. Emails, texts, recorded conversations. He handed me the folder. Inside were printed emails between Patricia and the new lawyer. Plans to isolate me from the family. Strategies to make Dad believe I resented him. Timelines for transferring assets. "She manipulated both of us," Daniel said. His voice cracked. "She used Dad's illness. She used my debts. She made me believe you were the problem. Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because it's wrong. What she did to Dad, what she did to you, it's wrong." He wiped his eyes. "I'll testify if you need me to." I took the folder. "You understand this destroys everything? The inheritance, your marriage, your reputation?" "I know," Daniel said, "but it's the truth." I filed the legal challenge on a Monday morning. The paperwork was extensive. Allegations of forgery, undue influence, exploitation of a vulnerable adult. I included the recordings of financial evidence, Daniel's emails, everything. The court scheduled a hearing for 6 weeks out. Patricia exploded. She called me screaming. "You're destroying this family. After everything we tried to do for you." I hung up. She hired a bigger law firm. She filed counterclaims, alleging I had stolen from Dad, that I was lying about the loans, that the recordings were fabricated. She sent letters to extended family, painting me as greedy and vindictive. Aunt Joy stopped taking my calls. Uncle Pete told me I was making a mistake. But I also heard from people I didn't expect. Mrs. Patterson offered to testify. Mr. Henderson sent affidavits. Dad's old business partners provided statements. Then Patricia made her biggest mistake. She threatened to expose family secrets. She told Daniel she had information that would destroy me. Daniel told me everything, and I gave him permission to record their conversation. Patricia tried to control the narrative. She gave an interview to the local newspaper, claiming I had abandoned Dad in his final years. She posted on social media about ungrateful children who turn on their families. Old relatives I hadn't spoken to in years called to tell me I was wrong. Cousins I grew up would block me online. The community Dad had lived in for 40 years turned against me, but I had prepared for this. I released a statement through my lawyer. Just facts. The amount I had loaned Dad, the dates of the suspicious transfers, the expert testimony about forged signatures. I didn't attack Patricia personally. I just presented evidence. Local reporters started digging. They found Daniel's business failures. They found Patricia's previous lawsuit against her own mother's estate. They found her pattern of financial manipulation. The narrative shifted. Not completely, but enough. Neighbors who had shunned me started calling. "We didn't know," they said. "We believed her." The newspaper published a follow-up story. This time, they interviewed Mr. Henderson and Mr. Brennan. They reviewed the court documents. Patricia's public image cracked. The courthouse was packed. I had never seen so many people at a probate hearing. Family members filled the gallery. Reporters sat in the back row. Patricia and her lawyers occupied one table. Daniel sat separately, his face pale. The judge reviewed the evidence methodically. Bank statements, medical records showing Dad's cognitive decline, expert testimony about the forged signatures. My forensic accountant testified for 2 hours. He explained how the transfers didn't match Dad's previous patterns. He showed how Patricia had systematically moved assets into her control. Mr. Henderson testified about the approvals he had questioned. Mr. Brennan testified about Patricia's interference with Dad's legal planning. Mrs. Patterson testified about conversations with Dad. He was confused, she said. He'd tell me one thing one day, something different the next. But he always spoke highly of Mark. Patricia's lawyers tried to discredit everyone. They suggested I had fabricated evidence. They claimed Dad's recordings were taken out of context. Then Daniel took the stand. He testified about Patricia's manipulation, about the documents he had signed without reading, about the emails where she had planned everything. Patricia's face went white. Her lawyers requested a recess. The judge ordered a review of the contested will. The next day, Mr. Brennan's old law firm brought a sealed envelope to court. It had been in their vault for 14 months, marked with specific instructions for opening. Valerie requested permission to unseal it. Patricia's lawyers objected, but the judge had seen enough evidence of fraud. The envelope was opened in chambers. Inside was a document labeled Contingency Last Will and Testament. I sat in the courtroom, my hands sweating, as the judge read through it. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Patricia kept whispering to her lawyers. The judge returned to the bench. This document contained a specific clause, she said. It was designed to activate if evidence of undue influence or fraud was presented regarding the primary will. She looked directly at me. The contingency will is valid. It was properly executed and witnessed. It supersedes a contested will. Patricia stood up. Your Honor, this is... Sit down, Miss Patricia, the judge said sharply. The sealed document was scheduled to be read publicly the following morning. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat in my apartment, thinking about Dad. I thought about all the times he had been hard on me, all the criticism, all the comparisons to Daniel. I thought about the man in the hospital who had called me a disappointment. I thought about the man on the recordings who had called me his backbone. Which one was real? Maybe both. Maybe Dad had been complicated, flawed, trying to do right while being manipulated. Maybe he had hurt me while also trying to protect me. At 11 p.m., Patricia called. I almost didn't answer. Mark, she said. Her voice was different, smaller. We need to talk, privately, before the reading tomorrow. About what? A settlement. I'll admit the transfers were inappropriate. I'll return some of the money, but you dropped the fraud allegations. We keep this private. Why would I do that? I asked, because you'll get what you want. Money, recognition. You don't need to humiliate me publicly. This was never about humiliating you, I said. It was about the truth. I hung up. The courtroom was even more crowded the next morning. The judge's clerk brought out the contingency will, now unsealed. The reading took 30 minutes. Dad had left majority control of everything to me. The house, the business assets that remained, the small savings account nobody had known about. But more importantly, he had included a letter explaining why. The lawyer read it aloud. To my son, Mark, it began, if this will is being read, it means I wasn't strong enough to resist Patricia's influence. It means I failed to protect you from people who saw you as an obstacle. The room was silent. Mark sacrificed with his family in ways nobody acknowledged. He paid my debts. He saved my business. He never asked for recognition. He just helped because that's who he is. My eyes burned, but I didn't look away. Daniel is my son and I love him, but he's weak. Patricia knows this. She's been manipulating him for years, using his failures to gain control. I'm leaving Mark in charge because he's the only one strong enough to fix what I've broken. The letter continued with specific instructions about the business, about property, about family heirlooms. Daniel was crying. Patricia sat frozen, her face like stone. The judge looked at me. Do you accept this inheritance and its responsibilities? I do, I said. The final piece was a video file. The lawyer had mentioned it in the letter. There's one more thing, she said. Your father recorded a message. The screen flickered to life. Dad appeared, thinner than I remembered, his skin gray, but his eyes were clear. Mark, he said. I'm sorry. For the hospital. For making you believe you were a disappointment. Patricia was there. She'd been coaching me for weeks, telling me what to say. She said if I didn't publicly cut you out, you can test the primary will and tie everything up in court for years. He coughed, pausing to catch his breath. She was smart. She knew I was sick. She knew I was confused. She used that. Dad looked directly at the camera. But I was never so confused that I forgot who you really are. You're the backbone of this family. You're the one with integrity. And I'm trusting you to fix this mess I'm leaving behind. He smiled weakly. Don't gloat. Don't be cruel. Just do what's right. That's all I ever really wanted. The video ended. The courtroom was silent. I didn't gloat. I didn't attack Patricia publicly, though the evidence was overwhelming. I simply took control of what Dad had left me. I sold the house and used the money to pay off Daniel's debts. I set up a trust fund for education in my parents' names, something Dad had always wanted. Patricia and Daniel divorced. Daniel started over, this time without someone controlling him. We talk sometimes now. Not often, but sometimes. I learned that being a disappointment wasn't about what I did or didn't do. It was about other people's need to create a narrative that served them. Dad saw through it in the end. He left me more than money. He left me proof that I had never been the problem. I rebuilt the family business ethically, hired people Dad would have respected, and finally accepted the truth. I was never the disappointment. I was the one who held everything together while everyone else fell apart. And that was enough.